The 6 to 7 Figure Show, Episode 5. Ready? Let's hit it.
Broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun outside Phoenix, Arizona, this is the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Tired of working so hard and having no time? Take your six-figure practice and turn it to a thriving seven-figure enterprise. And now, your host, author, speaker, mentor, and strategist, Frank Bria.
This is the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Welcome. I'm your host, Frank Bria, and today, this week actually, we're going to talk about email marketing. How do you use email to encourage people who are on your list to take action? That's what we're going to talk about today. So, that's this week. And if you're familiar with the show, today I'm going to teach you about everything you need to know to do a really good email marketing campaign. And then later on this week, we're going to have a hot seat interview with a real entrepreneur struggling with how to put this together for his particular business. And then if you want to join in the discussion, then you need to join us over at 7 Figures Plus. That's our free Facebook group. And there we're going to be talking about this all week. So jump on over to 7 Figures Plus. It's free. You can find the link on frankbria.com. Just go to the homepage. It's right smack there in the middle of the page. Or just search for us on Facebook. Come to 7 Figures Plus. Either way, you're going to find it. And that's where the discussion's going on. So if you want to talk about your email campaign and maybe even sort of get ideas about how other people are doing theirs, that's where the dialogue's going to go on. That's where the questions are going to get answered. That's where you're going to get some support. But today, I'm going to teach you what you need to know to put a good email campaign together. So let's get started. Okay, just to be clear, today I want to talk about using email to get people on your list to take some action. Okay, so I mean, there are a lot of times where people use email as just kind of newsletters, and it's important that you have some kind of a broad sort of keep in touch strategy, as Michael Port likes to call it. That's very important, but it also needs to be done with very specific actions in mind. So I'm going to talk about that, and really, there's two big kinds of things you can do with email, okay? And the two that we're going to talk about today are what I like to call short-term action campaigns and a broad keep-in-touch strategy, okay? Care and feeding campaign. So you've got short-term action, which is going to be over like a week or two. You want to get the people on your list to do something very specific, okay? And so over a very short-term period of time, you want them to take action. And care and feeding is the long haul, is the long-term view. Okay, these might be like if you are a student of Russell Brunson, he kind of calls these the Seinfeld campaigns or something like that. But this is the broad view, the long play for your emails. All right, so putting these all together, and we're going to dig into each of those and talk about how to do them. But if you just think about the broad picture, when you first acquire an email, the very first thing that you want to do, just like we talked about last week, is to get them to take some action. So the very first thing they should see is a short-term action campaign. This is why the sort of broad, sign up for my newsletter just isn't a really compelling call to action anymore. There isn't anything you're going to get out of that necessarily. I mean, yeah, you might hear some things that are interesting, but that's just not enough for people to give your email address. So what we need to do is we need to follow up with that lead magnet into something that is going to get them to take action. Now, remember, we created the lead magnet with the short-term action in mind, if you remember from last week. If you haven't remembered that, that's episode 3. So go back and listen to episode 3 if you need a review on that. But the idea was that we created a goal for the entire thing. We're going to sell something, or we're going to have them do something. Either they call us, set up an appointment for a consultation, or they buy some kind of a product from us. So those are the things that we want them to do in the short term. Now, what if they don't do them? Okay. It could be that we go through the short-term action campaign and they just don't react. If they don't react, then we need to move them back. Okay, because we don't want to follow another short-term action campaign right after that. Short-term action campaigns are intense. They get a lot of emails over a short period of time encouraging them to do something. So we want to make sure that, we give a little bit of a breather. So after a short-term action campaign, we're going to kick them back into care and feeding. Now, what's important here, and we're going to learn this as we go through, is that not everyone is equal in all of these places. So we might find during a short-term action campaign, we're taking somebody from cold email to buyer through some stages that we're going to talk about. But when we get them into the care and feeding campaign, we don't know how far down that path they went. I mean, maybe they got halfway to buying and then just stopped. Or maybe they only took one step towards buying and stopped. Or maybe they got all the way up to the buying thing and then just something at the last minute made them not buy. So we need to be able to react to these different kinds of people differently. And we need a strategy to do that. And the secret for how to react differently to these different emails is by using the audience segments that we talked about earlier. That's at the very beginning. So that's going to be episode 1 if you haven't had a chance to listen to that one. But audience segments are all about knowing the need of your audience and reacting to it appropriately. And that's exactly what we're going to do. But first, let's talk about short-term action campaigns and how to put those together. Remember, a short-term action campaign is a series of emails over 1 or 2 weeks that gets someone to take a very specific action. Maybe it's to buy something, maybe it's to call you, whatever that action is. Now, to build them, what we're going to do is we're going to use a story arc in order to construct a series of emails that gets people to take the action you need. And again, just like in the lead magnet case, we're going to work backwards. Okay, so we're going to start at the action that you want them to take, and we're going to work backwards to the beginning. But here's the framework we're going to use. We're going to use the framework of the audience segments. Now, remember, in episode 1, we talked about the audience segments. They're loiterer, looker, shopper, buyer. The loiterer doesn't know anything about you, needs to hear your unique selling proposition, the big problem you solve. The looker is interested, has some wants and preferences, but needs you to paint a picture of what things are going to be like with your product, or in some cases without your product. The shopper is interested, but doesn't know if they want to buy yours. And so you're going to have to talk about facts, figures, features, and benefits with a focus on benefits. So we need to understand what the problem is, and we need to deliver the benefits that fix that problem. And then finally, the buyer wants to transact, so we're going to have to explain how that process works. And we're going to create a story arc that covers all of these. Okay? So here's how it goes, generally speaking. And you can split this up into multiple emails if you have a really big ask. So, for example, if you're selling something that's $10,000, okay, you're going to have to, this can't be just something that you do in like 4 emails and then you're done, right? You're going to have something at the end, like a webinar or something like that, that's going to help move that across, and there even a one-on-one conversation is going to move that ball across the line. But keep in mind that you may need to elongate this process out if you are asking something really big from your audience. But generally speaking, let's think about the stages, okay? So we're going to use a story arc. That means it's going to either be your story or a client's story or some story that you can tell of somebody who solved this problem. And generally speaking, here's how it's going to go. So the very first email you're going to send out at the beginning of this is going to establish who you're talking to and the problem you're trying to solve. This is really well done if it's the very first email people get the moment they opt in. Okay, because then this is an opportunity for you to introduce yourself, to deliver whatever free lead magnet you said your freebie was going to be, and then to say, for people who are in this target, I want to, over the next couple of days, I'm going to show you how you can solve big problem. And that's it. Every time what we're going to do with these emails is we're going to leave hooks. Okay, hooks for the next thing. Some people call them open loops, whatever. They're going to be hooks. Okay, it's like a cliffhanger. Every single email is going to be a cliffhanger for the next one. So by just simply saying, over the next couple of days, I'm going to show you how Jenny was able to conquer her fear of whatever. Okay, so we're introducing a character in a story, and we're going to say that we're going to be telling that story. So that first email is pretty short and sweet, but it sets the stage. Okay. Or as, sometimes the news reporters like to say, you set the table. Put the facts down on the table so that people understand the context of what you're going to do. Then we're going to move to the second email, and that's where we're going to kick the story off. Now, remember here, now we have lookers, because if someone's reading that email, then whatever you said to the loiterer stuck. Okay, so they're gonna stick around for that email. So now they're lookers. So now we got to sort of paint a vision. So in this email, what I want you to do is I want you to start to tell a story about your main character. And I want you to bring it to climax. In other words, I want you to tell the story in such a way that everything gets to this dramatic, really horrible, awful point where you think all is lost. And then at the end of that email, you're going to say, and by the way, Jenny figured out a way to get through her problem, and I'm going to share that with you tomorrow or in 2 days or whatever. Okay, so again, cliffhanger. Now, if you think that you don't have something that could be overly dramatic, then you really need to rethink your value proposition. Okay, because the thing that you have to do, the thing that you're trying to sell has to be able to change people's lives. You have to believe that you're changing lives. And if you're changing lives, then the question you have to answer yourself for your audience is going to be, what happens if I don't do this? What happens if I don't? Okay, that's the story you want to tell. The story you want to tell is the what happens if I don't. That's going to be your second email. Okay, now your third email, if you move over into the third email, we have to resolve the problem, right? Now I've got a shopper, so I'm hooked. I am convinced that my life will be awful if I fall into the same scenario as the main character of the story, and I want to hear what he or she did to get out of it. So this third email, we're going to resolve the problem. And we're going to resolve the problem with an eye towards the benefits of whatever it is that you are selling or you are asking them to do. So when we explain what happened, we can delineate the points, the bullet points. Number 1, number 2, number 3. These were all involved in the resolution of the problem. And at the bottom for the hook, for the next email, you're going to say, and I can show you how you can get these same results as well. And I'll show you how that works tomorrow. Okay, so the hook now is, if I get to the bottom of that email, I believe that you have a way to solve this problem. I believe that it involved some of these bullet points, but I'm not really sure yet how I can get that for me. But in the next email, you're going to show them. And so now we've got a buyer. Okay, I've taken somebody to a buyer. They're saying, yeah, tell me how to get that. And so now in this final email, you're going to say, I've created a system that replicates these results. These are the benefits that you get out of it, and this is how you transact business, whether it's to click and give your credit card, or it's to call and make an appointment, or it's to attend a webinar, whatever the next step is. That's what you want them to do. Okay, so those 4 stages. Now, you can break them into more emails if you want. You probably can't make less emails out of it, though. You might be able to put them all into one if it was a small product, but like a big long sales page. That's what these long sales letters, very long sales letters kind of will do, is kind of walk people through that process. But if you're doing via email, people aren't going to read emails that long. They just don't. So you're going to keep them kind of short and sweet by splitting them up. Now, the first and the last email in the sequence can be shorter. The storytelling ones are going to be a little bit longer because people tend to get engrossed into those details. Okay? So let me walk you really quickly through an example here just so that we're talking about the same thing. Okay? and you understand how this all works. Let's say that you're selling health coaching, okay, and you're helping people lose weight. And let's say you're selling to women who don't have a lot of time, okay? All right. So the very first email is at the end of the lead magnet. You've given, the checklist, a daily checklist of keeping for the busy woman to stay healthy. Okay, so you're going to go through then that lead magnet. You're going to have those bullet points. You send them out in a PDF, and in that email, you're going to say, "I am health coaching, and I work with busy women, female entrepreneurs who don't have a lot of time to stay healthy, and I help women find the time to have the life they want to live and fit and healthy." Okay. And by the way, I want to tell you a story about a woman who might be just like you. Her name's Shelly, and she had a serious problem, and I'll share that with you tomorrow. Okay. So tomorrow's email comes out, and you start talking about Shelly. And Shelly's a very successful female entrepreneur, and she's really busy. She was very successful and didn't have a lot of time for health. And so because of that, she didn't always eat right, and she didn't have time for exercise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of this stuff crescendoed where she had heart pains and was rushed into the hospital. And, it's scary. Her family is just got word, and they're all rushing into the hospital to make sure that Shelly's okay. And then at the bottom, you're going to say, by the way, Shelly was in trouble. This was a serious health problem, but she found a way to fix it, and I want to share that with you tomorrow. Okay? Now we move on to email number 3, where we talk about Sherry. She was diagnosed that she had mild heart problems, and these are the things that, her doctor said, you're going to have to fix these things, Shelly. You're going to have to start finding some time to exercise and to eat better. And so, Shelly found a quick exercise routine that she can do in her office. And Shelly found quick meal plans that were good for her family and for her, that she was able, in a way, to get them delivered to her home. Whatever. I don't know. Whatever. These have got to line up with your offering, right? So whatever it is you're offering. Let's say you're offering meal plans delivered to the house and exercise videos that she can do from her office. Okay, so those would be the bullet points you would want to outline. You don't want to say that's your offer. You're not saying you're selling it yet. You're still telling Shelly's story. But at the end, you're going to say, and by the way, I can show you how you can avoid this happening to you and get this in your life. And I'll tell you about that tomorrow. And then in the final email, let's assume it's a program that you have to call for a consultation, okay? So in that final email, you're going to say, I've created a system that replicates what Shelly was able to do to fix her problem. And it involves that these are the benefits you get. This is what happens. And if you want to know more about how you can have this in your own life, pick up the phone and give me a call or schedule an online consultation, whatever. Okay, call to action. And that's it. Okay? So again, your mileage may vary. You may want to stretch this out a little bit longer. A day or 2 or 3 between each one. Your audience will all react differently to the emails and when they come out, et cetera, et cetera. So make sure you test and study those. But generally speaking, that's a short-term action campaign that will really help you drive your audience to take very specific action by using stories and a story arc to drive people's behavior. Finally, I'm going to talk about care and feeding campaigns. Now, this is what happens if you go through that whole short-term action campaign and your prospect doesn't react. Okay. Now, remember, as they've gone through that ascension sequence of the different stories, they may have gotten to a certain spot and then stopped making forward progress. Maybe they got to looker and stopped. Maybe they got to shopper and stopped. Okay. So we don't really know where they are yet, but we know for sure that there are going to be different things that motivate these people. Okay. Now, with a short-term action campaign, we have to use different calls to action for these different groups. Okay. There are 4 calls to action. Really, there are only 4. I mean, of all the different kinds of things that you can do, There's really only 4 different calls to action you can give to a prospect. Now, you can call it different stuff, but they kind of all fall in these categories. Okay, let's start at the top. So for a buyer, the call to action for a buyer is buy now. Okay, now you may call it something different, but fundamentally all you're saying is buy now. You're saying start your account, start your free trial, get started, build your plan, like whatever it is that gets them started, that's a buy now call to action. Okay, and that's what your buyer wants. Now, your shopper, because they're interested in hearing more and learning about what you have, they've got a particular problem they've already identified in their head, and they want it fixed. So here we have a fix it call to action. Okay, so it's going to be, of course, in the language of the problem that you have. So back in Shelley's case, the fix it call to action would be get healthy. Get healthy on your own schedule or something like that. Or, stop eating poorly, whatever. That you've got a problem, I need to fix it, okay? Now, the looker has identified some wants and preferences, and they want to achieve a vision in their life, but they don't really know if they have a problem yet or not. And so they respond best to the end state. I call these better life calls to action. Now, there is a subtle difference between better life and fix it. Okay, better life says get this great end result. Fix it is you've got a problem, get it fixed. The best way to think about better life calls to action is it's every beer commercial you've ever seen. Okay, I mean, that's all branding really is establishing better life, right? So if you're going to drink this beer, you're going to hang out with your friends at the bar and hang out with the really cool people and the beautiful women or whatever. Okay, that's a better life. That's the better life call to action. So in our world, let's say Shelley's story, the better life call to action would be fit on your own schedule, while the fix it call to action would be solve your heart problem or make your health problems go away. Okay, see what I mean? One is a positive outcome, sort of ethereal. It's not connected to a particular problem. Fix it is connected to a very particular problem that you have. And then finally, at the very end, the loiterer has the very easiest call to action and the weakest call to action that there is in anything, and that's learn more. Okay, so anytime you see a learn more call to action, remember you're talking to loiterers at this point. And it's the weakest, but also it's the easiest to get people to do. Okay. Learning more, you're not really asking all that much of the audience. So those are your 4, okay? Buy now for buyers, fix it for shoppers, better life for lookers, and learn more for your loiterers. Now, why do those matter? Because in a sophisticated care and feeding campaign, you would target different calls to action for different people. Okay, now you don't actually have to have different content in the emails, but the call to action at the bottom can be different based on who you have. Now, let's say that you're using a sophisticated email marketing system that allows you to tag people based on their responses. Okay, what you would do is you would send out a series of emails with different calls to action in order to tag people. Are they loiterers, lookers, shoppers, buyers? And the way to do that is to give them the appropriate call to action. Now, it's very much like if you've seen those machines where the balls roll down an incline and they're different size balls and the holes they have to drop through are different sized, right? You kind of have to have the small hole first, right? So that the really small balls fall through the small hole. Because if you started with the big hole first, then all the balls would fall into that first slot, right? If it was trying to separate them into the right size. So the same thing's true. We have to send out a buy now call to action first. And then we have to send out a fix it. And then we have to send out a better life. And then we have to send out a learn more. And the people who click on those different things are tagged with the appropriate tags. Okay. From that point on, you've got your groups essentially tagged, and they're going to get a care and feeding campaign until they indicate that they're ready to move up to something else. And when they do, you're going to move them in another short-term action campaign and pick up where you left off. Now, it's going to be different emails, of course, but now you know a little bit more about these folks and how further along in the process they are. Okay, so you're going to send out content. Let's say it's a newsletter. Let's say it's your typical blog post, your latest blog post, whatever. But the call to action at the bottom can be different for these different groups, so that your folks who are your loiterers get to learn more. Learn more about this issue, okay? The folks who are your buyers are going to get a buy now at the bottom until they actually buy and they become a customer, okay? So this is a little bit more sophisticated. If you don't have email campaign software that doesn't do that, or you don't know how to do that, then you'll need to just keep that in mind and try different ones to get people to pop. You just have to keep rotating up the calls to action. But keep in mind that it has the danger of actually walking somebody backwards through the process, right? Where somebody's a buyer and you give them a learn more and they click on learn more and it kind of just brings them back a stage, okay? You're always running that danger. But in a carrot feeding campaign, you're kind of playing for the long haul anyway, so it's all right. Now, one last thing about carrot feeding campaigns. What if people never click on anything ever? Generally speaking, best practices is if you have a list and people are not opening or clicking after about 180 days, you should drop them from your list. And some people say maybe even sooner, maybe even after 3 months. You should just drop them from the list or make them resubscribe if they're interested. And I think that's not a bad policy, actually, because remember that email open rates affect deliverability. So if you have a list of 10,000 people and only 50 of them actually open your stuff, then you're not going to get good deliverability. Your emails are just going to not show up, or they're going to go into the spam folder. So in order to protect deliverability, you want to do that kind of purging. So keep track of who's clicking on these links and who's opening, and then do a purge of your email list after this carrot feeding campaign runs for a while. If for people who just literally never click, never open at all. All right, that's all the time we got for today, but hopefully you've got some information on how to put your email campaign together. If you want to talk about this further, if you have questions, or even if you want to run through this for your own company and give it a shot and bounce ideas off of people, the place you need to be is 7 Figures Plus. Because that Facebook group, that free Facebook group, is going to be where you get that information. So go to frankberea.com, right in the middle of the page, click join us at 7 Figures Plus, get your invitation, or just find us on Facebook. Go onto Facebook and search for 7 Figures Plus, and we will be there. So join us there. If, on the other hand, you are implementing this and you need help implementing, then the place you need to be is a Scale Mastermind. So to join us there, what you need to do is go to frankberea.com and click on the 7 Figures training link. That'll get you into one of our next free live training sessions, and I will show you at one of those sessions exactly how you can join us in the Scale Mastermind program, where we actually have live events multiple times a year, get together, help each other, small groups, large groups. There's a number of different options available for you, but the way to get into that is to check us out at the 7 Figures training program. So go to frankberea.com. Step 1, subscribe to the podcast. Hopefully you've already done that. You're listening, but if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Number 2, join us at 7 Figures Plus, the free Facebook group. And number 3, join us at one of our 7 Figures training programs, and you can always find that at frankberea.com. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. I'm really glad you spent some time with us. Hopefully this has been helpful for you. We got a lot of stuff going on, so check us out at the 7 Figures Plus Facebook group. And until next time, I've been your host, Frank Berea. This has been the 6 to 7 Figure Show. And while you're working on all this great stuff and get your email campaigns together, I wish you all the best. Make it happen.